After the major, a lot of teams like to make roster moves, and we are getting into that now with ROSTERMANIA, and a big surprise of a move. Virtus.pro have signed electroNic from Cloud9. Even though Cloud9 make the playoffs of the major, they decide they're willing to let Virtus.pro take electroNic off their hands. And normally you get like at least some rumors as to moves that are going to happen, but we got none of that here. This just kind of came out of nowhere. And you can see down here, electroNic says basically he's very excited to play alongside James, one of the most unique in-game leaders in the game, and he thinks this team can win trophies. And to be honest, I'm probably going to agree, because you look at the player he's replacing in Mir. Mir was having a pretty rough time on this team, had just a 0.97 rating against top 30 teams, and it's not like he was playing bad roles, because you actually look at the roles that they were both playing. You can see on the left here, Mir's roles, on the right, electroNic's roles. They're actually very similar. You know, they both play middle on CT Ancient. They both play middle on CT Anubis. They both play A rotate on CT Inferno. That is an incredibly important position on CT's side. It is so key knowing when to rotate between the two bomb sites on that map. Mir was playing B short. electroNic was playing A connector. That's something I don't think is going to be a massive issue, though, because Flit has played on B short in the past. Maybe he will slot over there. Maybe they'll switch things up slightly. But electroNic also a pretty versatile player. And then again, Overpass and Vertigo, very similar roles. Similar on T side as well. So really, Mir probably should have been getting way more output from his positions. And I think this tweet actually puts it pretty well. You know, Mir was playing roles with game-defining potential. Was that because of the VP system or because of him? electroNic will definitely bring more firepower, but does that mess with VP's system at all? And initially I was scared that it might mess with their system, but actually the more I think about it, I think this is a slam dunk move, because you consider the previous players VP have had, they were fine with Yakinda. They were absolutely fine with Yakinda. If anything, that was arguably when they were at some of their best for consistent results. And I think electroNic is a much more well-rounded player than Yakinda. He doesn't have to go aggressive all the time if he doesn't want to. And I just get the feeling electroNic will bring so much more ability to win rounds by himself and still not affect the system or anyone else on the team too much. So I actually think this is a very exciting signing. This, for me, pushes VP up to be proper title contenders. And the other thing you've got to remember is, you look at this former roster, a bunch of the riflers are actually way more inexperienced than you would think. Mir, Flit, Norbert, Fame. None of these guys have been around for a long, long time. And so, because of that, you now get the experience of electroNic, which is undoubted. We all know electroNic has been around for so long. But he can also bring some different ideas to this team now. He's been on the Navis. He's been on Cloud9. I honestly think electroNic will now bring new ideas to this squad, and that could actually be very helpful in itself. If he just brings a couple of ideas that James is willing to listen to, I think it could work well, because I do actually think James' system, while it's very particular and he loves to always wait for the late round, I do think James sometimes doesn't allow his players to make plays themselves enough of the time. And I think electroNic can bring the pendulum back just a little bit and make VP a little less predictable. It's obviously the other side of this, though, in Cloud9, who have not signed their replacement yet. We don't know who their replacement is going to be, but I think the main thing everyone is thanking the Lord about is that surely this means Cloud9 actually signed an AWPer now. Because a lot of people were worried when Cloud9 made a pretty good major run, when Boomich was popping off on a couple of maps with the AWP, people were thinking, oh, they might just stick with the same 5. And to be honest, no one believes in this 5 to win tournaments without an AWPer. But you know what? I think surely they get an AWPer now. Surely they get an AWPer now. I'm literally almost trying to will this into existence at this point. But I think that game against Vitality probably proved to them that they are not at the top level. They lost that quarterfinal pretty convincingly. And so I think surely Cloud9 get an AWPer. I do think, back to the VP point quickly, something else you got to remember about Mir, he was kind of touted as like the next electroNic back in the day. He was this crazy aggressive rifler. He was always playing pretty well. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to bring electroNic in to replace him. And Maui Snake actually comes out and says straight away he thinks this is a super team. Now listen, I don't know if I agree with this, but he goes ahead and explains it. See Launders having a little bit of a pop-off saying this is the first ever big signing for VP. Maui Snake coming back and saying homegrown stars can be part of the super team. The main point Maui's trying to make is he thinks that a super team is getting a world-class player in the majority of the roles on the team. And I sort of see what he's saying when you look at this lineup. James, probably a world-class in-game leader. You know, electroNic, probably world-class in his role. Flip and Norbert also similar. But for me, there's certain intangibles to a super team that means this is not one. I mean, firstly, I don't think any of these players are really that close to being the best in their role in the world. And secondly, I wouldn't call James a top AWPer. And I think that is big, right? If you've got like a really good AWPer and a really good rifler, that for me already is such a good foundation. But in two very important roles, I just don't know if VP have those elite players. Even as a rifler, Flip, top 5, I think even that is a little debatable. So, yeah, I don't see this as a super team, but, you know, it's interesting seeing people are very high on this move. As for Cloud9, you might have seen in the thumbnail, rumors coming out that they are ready to pay the full buyout for m0nesy. And listen, I don't know if I believe this, okay? I'm going to come out and say it. This kind of feels like when a team is really desperate to get someone and they're just putting rumors out there, trying to put some pressure on. You know, you take your shot with a 10 out of 10. You try and get them to come over. But I think whatever happens here, this is undeniably a good thing. Rumors coming out about m0nesy maybe joining Cloud9. Because firstly, it does put pressure on G2. I'm not going to lie. If you like G2 and you like m0nesy, you should be desperate for this team to have some pressure to make some changes soon. Because m0nesy has been so good. You can make an argument that m0nesy has been the best player in CS2. Right from the start, he's been great with the AWP. So many other AWPers struggle to transition. He has been there time and time again. And yet, what has he got to show for it? What does he have to show for it? Not enough. And yes, he's early in his career, but he's the sort of player that could be in competition to be the best Counter-Strike player ever. I actually think he has that ability. And so even though it's early in his career, I want him to be already competing for trophies. I don't want to look back at the end of m0nesy's career and say, oh yeah, but when he was on G2, he didn't actually get the chance to win that much. I mean, sure, he did, you know, over in CSGO with Katowice and Cologne, but Counter-Strike 2, it hasn't really happened. I don't want to see that. I want to see G2 pressured into making moves because m0nesy can now say to them, hey, listen, I've got options, man. I've got options. You know, if we don't step up our game soon, I might try and join Cloud9. I do think the problem is G2 have basically come out in the past and said they're not willing to sell m0nesy for anything. And listen, I think that's a bit of a lie, you know. We all have things we really like that we really wouldn't want to sell. But at the end of the day, everyone's got a price, right? Everyone's got a price eventually, okay? So I do think that it's going to be hard for Cloud9 to get this deal over the line. But at the same time, I think it's probably good all round. Question is, though, let's say Cloud9 can't get m0nesy. Because if they get m0nesy, my God, that team is instantly a title competitor. And it would actually be so good if it happens. I mean, it would be bad for G2 because I'm not going to lie, G2 desperately need to keep this guy. Desperately. Because otherwise, I think Nico is gone as soon as possible. Maybe he'll go to Falcons or something. And then the team just falls apart. So I do think they need to keep this guy immediately. And I think they will. And so what are Cloud9's options? Because I'm not going to lie, I'm going to assume they're going to get an AWPer. I think first option is the former Spirit AWPer, Artfrost. 22 years old, has been doing well with Paravision. He was already doing well with Spirit. He is not that experienced, though. Okay, these are the 2 LANs he's played in his career. He did well in both of them. But if I click on big events, man's never had a big event in his life. Okay, so not that experienced, but I think when he was on Spirit, he showed he was solid. The question is, do you want to pick up a player like that for a team that maybe should be winning right now? I mean, it depends what other options you have, right? But I think whatever happens, Artfrost is a solid option that should be gettable, and that is already a good start for Cloud9. Next, you have Deco. He's someone who has always put up great numbers in his career, But I'll be honest, whenever I've seen him come to lands, even if he gets the numbers sometimes, I don't always feel like he gets the sort of impact I would want. So I don't think I would go for Deco, but he's another player who's obviously farming and doing very well against a lower level of competition. And then the final option, the most experienced one, would be Dexter. You could try and get this guy. He has been not doing much for a long, long time, just been on the bench of OG. I think he is easily the most proven option they have. He is someone who, in my opinion, would come into the team and do well on the AWP. He's shown at big tournaments in the past he can be pretty good with the AWP straight away, which would be good for the team. But there is a reason why he's not been picked up yet. There are huge rumors that apparently he is quite toxic and quite hard to work with behind the scenes. Now, depending on how bad that is, I think you should maybe try and just work with it. But at the same time, I feel like someone like Artfrost is just such a solid guy you can just pick up. I think he will be decent. He was already playing with Spirit and playing pretty well at events, doing solid. And he also definitely has the upside. It just means you might have to sacrifice winning straight away while he gets some experience. But I do think he'd be solid long term. Either way, that's the Cloud9 VP section done. There is a little more news. Furia officially benching Art and Guerry, moving away from the coaching role and becoming head of esports instead. I already made a tweet about this. I think this is obviously a move that had to happen. And by the way, they're getting some Academy player Kai in for the short term. Don't expect much from him, to be honest. Furia Academy are not that good, so I don't think he'll be great. But yeah, this is a move that had to happen, and Fallen can probably in-game lead now. I think that's fine. The problem is, feels like you've missed out on so many opportunities in Brazil. And a lot of the players that you maybe could have got a year ago, I don't know if you can get now. And also, buyouts in Brazil are notoriously high. It is hard to buy players. There's basically some contract laws, which mean I think the buyout has to be a certain amount of multiplied by the salary the player's getting or some weird stuff. And it basically makes it so that you're probably having to pay in the millions to get players. And that is tough. That is tough. I think the one thing that Furia can maybe work with is that at least they probably don't have to get an in-game leader. Because if you were having to try and buy Big Uzera or someone like that, oh my god, you might be breaking the bank. But instead, you can probably just try and get a player in, maybe an aggressive rifler for Art, something like that. You could maybe put Cello back onto aggressive roles. I think he's good in those positions too. But yeah, you've got options basically. You don't have to get an in-game leader, so that's good. But I don't know what you do for coach. I think it's a travesty that Zeus, that is Zeus with a W, has been around for so long and has never been able to coach Furia. Because for me, they have been one of the worst coach teams for a while. They never look disciplined. They never look like they have anything like groundbreaking to me. I don't know if it was the players that were struggling, but I don't think Guerry did a great job coaching this team. And yet, Zeus has not had the opportunity, and now, well, he gets to go to Liquid instead. I think he's doing a solid job there. They seem like they're on the right pathway, and I have no idea who Furia get. They're just going to have to get someone who's up and coming, and listen, I don't know about the lower Brazilian scene. I don't know who they get. But that is a tough position to be in. You do not have an obvious option. You're going to have to take a chance on someone. I want to say finally, just at the end of this, my guy Savage. You might remember him from an earlier Pro League season. He had his dad there alongside him, Ben the Legend, Australian player who joined Sprout Academy, I should say. And then literally 1 month later, 32 days later, they shut down. And it's another example of how chasing your dream in esports can suck, because he literally went across the world to try and chase his dream over in Europe from Australia, right? Imagine that. You're 19 years old. You're completely upending your life to chase your dream. And then I actually think it's pretty awful that a company cannot realize they're going to go bust in 30 days and have you make this big of a change in your life. And it also sucks because before this, he tried to join an Asian team, GG How, and there were some contract issues there as well. So, Savage, if you're watching this, keep at it, keep grinding. Hopefully, in the future in your career, you can look back at this and say, remember those awful times when I was grinding, and thank God I grinded through. But yeah, it's tough. Definitely give him some support because esports can be rough out there, man. It can be rough sometimes. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. We'll see if ROSTERMANIA continues. I will keep you posted. I'll catch you next time.